Welcome to our Wellness Wednesday Health Show. I'm your host, Dr. Caldwell from the Back Pain and Joint Center of Texas. And once again, we're on location with a very, very special guest, Dr. Jody Caldwell. Dr. Caldwell, welcome to our show today.
Thank you.
Now, for the past 13 years, I've heard the notorious, infamous Dr. Caldwell in a good way. For many of my patients, they spoke of this doctor who was unlike other doctors, who was more holistic in nature. She was a medical doctor, she was caring, she wasn't quick to prescribe medication, and again, unique in that holistic approach. And so, again, for years and years, I heard of this tale, and I often wondered if it was real. And then now, after finally meeting you, super excited to actually be neighbors with you now.
Yeah.
So let's start there, Dr. Caldwell. What made you want to be more holistic in nature as opposed to maybe the traditional or more common medical route that we see?
So what happened was I started asking my patients why they were sick. I started asking myself why my patients were sick because it didn't make sense to just treat symptoms and treat them for what they were coming in the door for. I was much more interested in identifying the source of their illness. And so 30 years ago, I started asking why. And it's led me to a very long series of years of learning, and I'm constantly learning new things. But the why is always getting down to the underlying causes, which is what led me to functional medicine and an approach that looks more for systems instead of symptoms.
Now, the term functional medicine, I think, is gaining more popularity now. But for someone watching this, they're like, oh my gosh, I would love my doctor to ask me why and go deeper. How would you describe functional medicine to someone who's just hearing that term?
Yeah, I think functional medicine is just going to the underlying source of the disease and identifying the underlying causes that lead to the disease. The disease is usually not the problem. The disease is the result of an accumulation of things. So we look for mediators and triggers and things in the environment that might upset the normal balance that the body has. And we're incredibly capable of healing and being healthy, and we eat all the wrong foods and do all the wrong movements and take all the wrong drugs, and our bodies are pretty resilient still, but it does finally break down.
Despite our best efforts to destroy our body, right?
Correct.
We are resilient. I remember years back, I heard this doctor speak, and he had a unique perspective that helped shift my thinking. This was, a decade plus ago. In his perspective, he said, he didn't like the word disease. He said diseases are simply names of symptoms that we have to give. And that's kind of what I'm hearing you say. It's if we have a cluster of symptoms, well, what's causing those symptoms? If I have a cluster of symptoms in my house, if there's smoke coming out of the windows, right? If there's heat on the door handle, there's chances are there's a fire, right? Those are symptoms. So if we have inflammation, if we have elevated blood sugar, if we have high blood pressure,
Correct.
Those are symptoms, but there's something causing that.
Correct.
But just that shift in how we look at it.
Just asking why is the answer. You just ask why. Why do you have these problems? Why are these problems presenting themselves? And then the next question I think has to be asked is, what do we do about it?
So what would be some of the, I guess we'll say, the common things that our population struggles with is obesity, diabetes, cholesterol, blood pressure. When we look at some of those common ones, what are some of the common reasons behind why you see those things happening for our population?
So there's been an enormous shift in our diet in the last 50 years. Grandpa and grandma grew everything on the farm and dug everything out of the ground for vegetables. They couldn't run to the local HEB to get their vegetables, and so they had a much higher quality nutrients, even if it wasn't available 12 months out of the year. And we have hybridized and commoditized our food to the point now where a lot of the food stuff that we're eating has no nutritional value whatsoever and is inflammatory and triggers all this inflammation. The sugars and the empty carbs are triggering insulin resistance, and insulin resistance causes hormone changes, causes sugar changes, causes weight changes. It just goes on and on. But it comes from the food that we're eating.
You know, as humans, we realize that to a certain degree. Like, I have a friend who a dog lover, right? Absolute dog lover. And if I were to go over to their house and take some fresh brownies and say, "Oh, I think your dog would love some brownies," they would attack me. They would throw themselves in the way before they fed their dog some brownies, but yet they don't hesitate to eat the brownies and what it does to them.
But that's because the dog is less resilient than the human at handling crud in his diet.
So they'd see the.
So we've gotten away with it, but no longer.
So
the game's up.
Our human resilience has actually been almost a hindrance in really identifying it, because so often patients are like, well, no, it's got to be more than diet. Well,
and we also see people that eat all the wrong things and do all the wrong things, and they feel fine and they don't have disease. And then we have patients that come to see us who are eating all the right things and doing all the right things, and their bodies are so fragile that they're hard to heal. So I think it just matters the resiliency of the individual.
One thing that I think we can say with confidence is eating healthy, proper movement, exercise will always benefit your health. Always 100%. Doesn't mean whatever symptoms you're struggling with are going to go away, but it will always be of benefit, right?
Well, and unfortunately, we've stigmatized healthy people. If you choose to eat healthy foods, you're the weirdo. And that shouldn't be the case. The people that are eating out of boxes and bags ought to be the odd ones, not the ones that are eating organic fruits and vegetables and buying food from their local farmers. They shouldn't be the odd ones, but our society has completely switched into what normal is.
It's so true, right? Eating healthy and buying organic food, you know, they still want to label, well, you should be barefoot and hugging trees somewhere, shouldn't you? Like, no, I just want to eat healthy. I'm a normal person. I just choose to be healthy and eat healthy foods. Now, you, for decades, you had been in a different type of practice model. And some of you may have been from Dr. Caldwell from Sadler days and then since then as well. But now you've switched gear, you're in a new home and really able to focus on the functional medicine aspect. So we're going to talk briefly about the transition from where you were and then the quick transition to what made you want to be here in your retirement years when you could have easily said, all right, I'm done, I'm out. Why be here now at this stage in your life?
I still want to try to help those patients. And so I look at myself as a coach. And so I can see problems that patients are dealing with and then help coach them back to health. And so I'm not done with my job. I had been working within the insurance model for 30 years, and insurance became more and more restrictive, and I was able to still do what I needed to do for patients, even if I wasn't compensated for it financially or paid for it. I still just kind of bucked the system and took care of people. But now the insurance model has gotten so rigid that they're, watching to see if I've checked the box off on these different procedures in the office. They really aren't interested that I'm teaching somebody how to take care of themselves or be healthy. They're much more interested to see whether I've done certain procedures on patients, and that's when it became untenable, and I just gave it up and decided to start just taking care of patients.
I love it. And I just think I thought that was phenomenal. You told me you retired, and I'm like, great. How long did you take off? Did you go on vacation? And you're like, no, I retired, and it was like the next week or two you were here, right, in this practice. So for those watching now, who perhaps some patients may have been patients for years back and lost track of you, where are you now?
So right now I'm on Loop 336 South. I'm in the TransMed Center. It's 2510 South Loop 336 West. And you can find me. Many of you know where Robert's Pharmacy is. I'm in the same building that they're in, and can see patients here now. For many years I've had a closed practice and wasn't able to see new patients because I was so overwhelmed and so busy, and now I have time to take care of people. So I've opened my practice up and now am welcoming new patients.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful new white building right on the loop. And for those who are patients in our clinic, she is right below us. So when you come to the main building, you dead end right into her clinic before you turn for the elevator. For people watching this, if they're thinking, gosh, I like what I'm hearing, how how would they know if you're the right type of doctor for them? What would be like a step one to interacting with you, becoming a patient of yours?
They can call the office, and my receptionist can give them more information. My phone number is 936-441-8999, and get any information that they need.
Okay, absolutely wonderful. As we're wrapping up, what would you, on a few more questions, because, well, we got you here, I want to pick your brain.
Okay.
We talked about food being a big health problem, right? What would be one simple solution for someone watching this who maybe they're not ready to give you a call, but they're sitting at home saying, I want to start making changes? What would be one thing? Because when we say food, I know some people go like, oh my gosh, they don't even know where to start. What would be one simple thing that you could recommend to those watching this day to help improve their health?
So I think what you've got to do is figure out how to incorporate more vegetables into your diet. I was raised by a mother that opened a can of green beans or a can of corn and served it with her cream of chicken soup casseroles. And I had no idea what to do with green leafy vegetables because I had no experience. So we all need to learn how to cook and consume healthy foods. We've kind of gotten into this habit that a healthy food is a salad, which it is, but when we go to that grocery store, there's an entire wall of vegetables, and most of us don't even know the names of half of those vegetables. We just sneak in and buy the 3 things that we do. So let's just learn what the different vegetables are. You've got an internet now. You can Google up a recipe. What do you do with fennel? What do you do with chard? What do you do with these vegetables? Just start educating yourself and start adding in some of those new things into your diet so that your body is now getting those nutrients, getting that inflammation down, and then you'll feel better and can start getting rid of the things that you know you don't need to be eating.
That's great advice. Just one at a time. I like how you said just add one, because that's so true. You know, if you grew up in a peas and carrots house, you're like, peas and carrots, that's it. That's all there are. Then you don't even ignore, your eyes don't even go to those other areas, which was almost heartbreaking when, you know, over the past year when a lot of people were fearful and unsure what to do. When you go to the grocery store, a lot of the things were off the shelves. The preservative foods, the unhealthy foods, the cereals, the toilet paper, all that was off the shelves. But one thing I noticed was never off the shelves that was always in stock was fresh veggies. They always had those in supply. So again, it's just making that shift.
You know, if we ate the 10 servings of fruits and vegetables a day that we were supposed to eat, we could only feed 10% of the American population, which is staggering. That gives you an idea of how little good food Americans are eating. And so we've got to make a complete step change in all of the economics of farming and food manufacturing, and the best thing is to have a consumer who wants a vegetable, and somehow somebody will find a way to sell it to you.
Now, there was a book I read a few years ago. I can't even remember the author right now, but it had a graph of 30 to 40 years ago, we spent this much on our food, and we spent this much on our health care, right? And it said as the time has gone on, it's the complete inverse now. We spend this much on our food, the 99-cent menu, right? And I've had many patients, you probably had over the years as well, where they said, gosh, I go to fast food 2 out of 3 meals, right? 2 out of 3 meals are eating fast food. So again, we spend this much on food and this much on healthcare, insurance, and other expenses. So
it was a real education when we had COVID and there were no restaurants to go to. There were families that had never eaten a meal at home prepared in that kitchen. So hopefully everybody's starting to learn how to cook and not going back to their bad habits, but food's the answer.
So many great resources that are available online too. I love that you talked about the low inflammation diet. We're big fans of that in our practice as well. Just so many just little things you can do. Pick one at a time. Like I said, pick one at a time, incorporate it. And I promise you, right, because this is something that for myself, you know, born and raised in, you know, like most other people here in the Houston, Texas area where, you know, lots of meat in our diet, learning how to eat a low inflammation is actually tastes good, right? You can make it taste good. So it's finding those recipes, having fun with it. If you enjoy, whether it's you're single, getting friends together, or if you're married, wherever your family situation may be, you can make it a fun event where you're eating healthy food instead of just unhealthy food.
Yeah.
So, Awesome. Well, Dr. Caldwell, I know you're busy. Thank you for your
Thank
time
you.
today. On here, we'll put links on Dr. Caldwell's clinic so you can connect with her directly. And as always, wish you guys the best in health and wellness, and we'll see you next week.